talking to a lot of the pro athletes. One of our players in the first part of this year was Stefano Vern, and he's from France. He said to me, I would love nothing more than to be on the Olympic team representing my country.
Welcome to Simply Pickleball, the podcast where we discuss all things pickleball, the fastest growing sport in America and around the world. We're interviewing the founders, industry leaders, athletes, lovers of the sport that are driving the spectacular growth. If you love pickleball as much as we do, listen in. Hi, I'm Crystal Brown, your host, and today we got a chance to speak with Adam Behnke, who's the Chief Operating Officer of DC Pickleball Team, based out of Washington, D.C. He was also formerly with the Major League Soccer team based in D.C., as well as the New York Yankees. He explains all things about Major League Pickleball, what's the current state, and what's to come. And now to the show. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited to talk to you about Major League Pickleball, and we'll get there for sure. But I wanted to start first with just kind of understanding your career path and maybe how you got started playing pickleball. But you can start with either one.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to start talking about pickleball. But there were a few things before that that I'd love to share. Originally born and raised St. Louis, Missouri, had an incredible opportunity to come out to New York City to run track and field at Columbia University and get my sociology and business degree. From there, kind of the world opened up in a really big way after getting introduced into the sports agency world. And I held a couple internships at local sports agencies and even NBC Sports. And as the world would have it, full circle now, one of the guys that I worked for at the sports agency actually is one of our principal owners with the DC Pickleball Team. So there's a lot in between there, but connecting, I guess, A to Z as it currently is, that's how we've gotten from step A to Z.
Well, so were you always interested in sports management or sort of the business of sports?
I was. For me, it was a big part of my life growing up. I had always played all the sports, and I just found it as something that was a place where you could see emotion and positivity and impact, and it changed people's lives in ways that other industries really didn't have that type of impact. Whether that's, we all remember our first baseball game with a significant other, parents, mom, dad, brother, sister, grandparent. You don't really say that about many other industries. And so for me, I looked at it as, while I would have loved to be a pro basketball player or baseball player, definitely would have never happened, but we all dreamed that at some point. What else could I do in this space and really use my story and coming out of St. Louis into New York and then now where I am today? How could I use that to help inspire other people that might also be interested in getting into the sports industry and telling my story and being a part of that inspiration path for somebody else? I found it as a very special space that I wanted to get involved with. And so started my career with the New York Yankees, smiling and dialing, selling tickets and learning all the tricks of the trade. And with our season ticket holders, some incredible people, incredible companies, and was there for about 5 years until making a move down to the DC area to launch a USL soccer team called Loudoun United from scratch, 5,000 person stadium from ground up in a matter of 16 months. And got to work with the principal owners actually of the pickleball team during that time. And in that project, it was really fun to see that all come about. Lots of stress and little sleep, plenty of coffee, but life-changing for all of us to be able to get that off the ground and running. And it still sits there today and impacts the community in a positive way, going back to what I mentioned and what was my inspiration from the very beginning.
So when was the first time you heard of pickleball? When's the first time you heard that mentioned?
This is one of my favorite things to ask people in general, because for me, it was my grandfather, almost 10 years ago saying, Adam, I'm playing pickleball with my buddies at the local rec center or church or whatever it may be. And I said, that's great, Grandpa. Sounds cute. There's no way I want anything to do with pickleball. It's like, it's for you guys. Fast forward, I hear about it another time from our principal owners, and it was a business opportunity. And then I even kind of laughed at them as well when they first brought it up, of like, oh, pickleball is really a thing. It sounds like it's growing and going in the right direction, but let me do some more research and think about it. Sure enough, I am so happy and grateful for the opportunity to be in the sport and being at the front seat, really with the front row view.
Yeah. And do you play? Are you a player yourself?
I do. Just like everybody else, I've caught the bug. When we launched the team in January, I started playing myself, and now find myself out there on the court courts, whether it's drawing chalk lines and portable nets outside here where I live, or going to some courts nearby to play with friends. It's a few times a week type of venture.
Let me understand if you can explain a little bit about Major League Pickleball versus maybe tournament pickleball or recreational pickleball. What differentiates Major League Pickleball? Maybe you can just kind of describe what it is, and then we can get into sort of how it came to be.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest differentiator is that it is a team-focused format. So there are 24 Major League Pickleball teams that represent 24 different cities around the country. Each of those teams is made up of 4 rostered athletes, 2 men and 2 women, which is a whole nother aspect that I think is incredible. The equity of the sport itself, you don't see that in any other sport. Men and women playing against each other and on the same side, and all the results equally matter the same. So really cool aspect of it. And we travel around to different facilities, at least for this year in 2023, 6 official tournaments, and we play against those teams for the season-long standings in hopes of being in the top 12 of 24, which we call the premier level, going into the next year, which then sets up this whole promotion relegation system that is known to many soccer and football fans, but never has been done in the States. So as it is this year, we're all fighting for the top 12 spots going into 2024.
There's no other sport in the U.S. that has that sort of format where you try to get into the premier. Interesting. That's so interesting. And so the 24, when Major League Pickleball began, there were already 24 teams sort of selected, or no?
No, and thanks for bringing us back to the beginning of it. There started with 6, it's doubled essentially. So it started with 6, then went to 12, and now to 24 over the course of the last couple of years. There was one event in 2021, really dipping the toes in, and then there was another few events, 3 events in 2022, and then we doubled to 6 events in 2024 and doubled the teams. And so you had 24 teams now, but 12 new expansion franchises, new ownership groups coming into the fold going into this 2023 season. And those are the likes of some pretty well-known athletes and celebrities. You got Tom Brady with the Las Vegas Night Owls. You got LeBron James with the New York Hustlers, Kevin Durant with the Brooklyn Aces. You got our group with Eva Longoria and Justin Verlander, Kate Upton, Odell Beckham Jr., Cliff Averill, Sean Marion, Rip Hamilton, and Mesut Ozil. The list goes on and on. And such a really exciting space to be in, as you have some really well-known people, but also smart, intelligent, well-experienced folks really writing the script of Major League Pickleball and pushing this forward, which is what excites me the most, is just working with this level of individuals to help create Major League Pickleball from ground up.
So who had the vision for Major League Pickleball? Where did this idea come from? Again, moving away from tournaments and into we should have a different format, and sort of encouraging all these celebrities and interested parties to get involved.
Absolutely. So Steve Khun is the visionary, founder and CEO of Major League Pickleball. He came up with this idea basically out of Texas. In his backyard, they've installed a pickleball court, and I believe his nephew introduced him to the game, and just like the rest of us, fell in love with it. And he started thinking, how can we go beyond just the backyard and playing this on a regular basis? It's brought me so much joy. It's brought so many others that I know a lot of joy and positivity to the world. I think this has the ingredients to create this incredible recipe at a pro level, a rec level, and everywhere in between. So fortunately, Steve and others came together, launched this league officially in late 2021, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since. So we're only 20-something months into what is Major League Pickleball, with so much more to look forward to.
And how many teams? Is there a limit? Is there an upper limit that's already sort of mapped out for the number of teams?
Yeah, for now, you kind of look at the rest of the sports world that we live within, and you look at the leagues that are somewhere between 20 and 30 teams for the most part. You see MLS expansion, you see USL soccer expansion, and others. I think we're going to stay steady at 24 for the foreseeable future, as we really want to build out a strong foundation, not go too fast, too soon, but make sure we're creating high quality content, high quality format rules, entertaining pickleball for the masses, and of course, making sure that the top players are excited to be a part of Major League Pickleball every step of the way.
I know there's a draft. Interesting, because some sports have that and some don't. And so that was an interesting decision to have a draft, and how does that work? I have friends that are so involved in certain drafts that they have a whole event every year and 10 people come together and they bid and they party and they do a lot. But I'm just wondering how this draft works, and maybe that's the future. There's going to be a lot of events around the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Most recently, we hosted the season 2 draft here in New York City in Central Park at Woolman Rink. Iconic location, so incredible to see that being that being a forum or an option for us, even in month 25 or whatever it is of Major League Pickleball. To be able to do that, I think elevates the brand, elevates the whole structure of what we're doing, the ecosystem at large. And so the draft is an exciting and nerve-wracking day for all of us as owners and operators. It's our chance to get the players that we're hoping to have as a part of our team. There's a ton of research that goes into it. You get the lists of all the professional pickleball players that have put in their application for the draft. Not only do they all have a rating system through Duper. Duper is a dynamic universal pickleball rating. And those ratings can range anywhere from as low as like the beginner at 2 all the way up to 7+, where the top players are currently. Not only are you looking at those ratings, but you're looking at their past performances over the last 30, 60, 90 days, who's trending upward, who's trending downward, who's kind of plateaued. You look at the players that play well together versus not. So there's a lot of relationships and intricacies of how different players play with each other, who's playing right side, who's playing left side. So you can imagine all the details and conversations that go on during this. But then you go in, typical draft snake order. So if you drafted number 1, that's going to be your first overall pick of the draft. Your next pick is not going to be until 24, and so on and so forth. So there's different philosophies and theories around, would you rather be number 1 and 24, or would you rather be that 12th and 13th pick back to back as you snake back around through that draft itself?
Yeah. Are you specifically involved, pretty heavily involved in your role there in the draft?
I get to be a part of it in the conversations, but by no means do I get to have the final say in it, because fortunately there are smarter, more talented, scouting minded people that understand all the intricacies that I described. So we're fortunate enough to have a GM named Josh Gartman and a head coach named Kyle McKenzie that really help advise on our strategy and put together that roster just like you would in any other sport.
So are the teams training together? Do they, how often do they come, and, is there seasonality to when they have to be maybe on site, things like that?
Absolutely. And that's an interesting element of it too, especially because where we are and being so young in this. And we have all the players of Major League Pickleball are spread around the country, but you're starting to see kind of a migration to specific areas in the country, because that's where a lot of the pros are living and playing. And so, of course, to get the proper training and to be able to elevate your game, you want to be close to players that are the same talent level as you or better. So you see a lot of players living in Florida. You see a lot of players living in Texas and California, because those are some of the hotbeds for pro pickleball players. And so our 4 players, Riley Newman, number 2 in the world, is based out of Dallas. We have amazing twin sisters out of Indianapolis, actually. And then a young up-and-coming star who has just really ascended the ranks so rapidly just in a year's time, Christian Alshon out of Florida. So we get the players all together as much as we can to train, because team synergy and culture is really critical to us at DC Pickleball Team. And having them together just recently, Monday and Tuesday, which was National Pickleball Day.
Yes.
No better way to celebrate than getting the whole team together and being able to play, and then also go out and meet some of the community members and play alongside of them. So long story short, training is critical, but it's not that frequent that we get them all together. I'd call it a few times a year leading into each of these Major League Pickleball events.
So how many events are there for Major League Pickleball? Like how do the events work?
Yeah, so this year specifically, there are 6. And as we look to the 2024 calendar, there's conversations of going to a larger scale. Maybe it's 8, maybe it's 10. Can we handle more than that? Of course, we want to be cognizant of the players' travel and their schedules, because they also play other tournaments throughout the year that are not team-oriented like Major League Pickleball. They're mostly playing like their individuals or their doubles and represent themselves, not the team. And so we want to be cognizant of the player health and their longevity, but also create some really great consistency with the schedule to be able to storytell and get all of our fans excited about what it means to be playing 2-3 times a month for the league standings, just like you would see in any other team or sport format.
Yeah. So I wonder if it'll be like the US Open every year. People come to New York to watch tennis, and maybe they'll be there, the big events. So can you explain how it works at these events? Do they lead up to a larger event? Is it, are they unique events and the winner's the winner? Like, how does it work?
Yeah.
How's it structured?
The events are incredible. I had no idea, and none of us really did, as we were getting into this in January, launching the team, launching the brand, everything goes live. And then our first ever event was in Mesa, Arizona, January 26th. Never forget it. You walk in, you got a beautiful facility out in Mesa, Arizona, one center court with, I'd say, 2,000 seats for people to come in and watch. And then you have the surrounding courts, just like you would at the US Open. You got your side courts, grandstand court, and center courts. And as the weekend goes on, from Thursday, which is like pool play day, to Friday pool play, but then you get into the brackets based on who advanced and who already got knocked out. And then Saturday, Sunday, you get to kind of like your championship days. So it's this awesome like crescendo from Thursday to Sunday, and the crowds just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you get to championship Saturday, Sunday, and it's just an electric atmosphere, like shoulder to shoulder, cowbells going off, people, signs, cheering, the music, the DJ, like this, the production of this is so good. Me and the rest of our ownership group are just like, all right, this is it. We've made a good decision. Can't wait to help push this thing forward. And every event we've gone to since that first one in January has just gotten bigger and better. We're constantly iterating and making it as entertaining and as sticky content as possible, both for the in-game and in-match experience, but also for the television too, since we're working with Tennis Channel and our YouTube channels, as well as conversations with other potential media outlets for deals.
That's amazing. Am I wrong to say that MLP was on CBS recently, or?
Yeah, so we've been on Tennis Channel. My favorite one was ESPN on June 19th. That was our super final, and it had hundreds of thousands of viewers watching at its peak, which was so exciting to see. The ratings, you even look at like the headlines of articles saying MLP outdoes NHL and MLS and MLB. Ratings for the day. It just shows you how many people want to watch and consume the sport itself. So really cool opportunity for us. And what is even better is it's just the beginning.
Yeah. So are each of the cities building pretty amazing facilities to support these teams, or, or training facilities? Is that, or maybe even viewing facilities where they can host tournaments?
Yeah. And that's a big conversation as it is today is, where do we go from? Because right now, yes, it's kind of like US Open style. You travel to these different cities, all teams kind of come into that weekend together from all over. And then you have that 4-day event. And then you have another 6 to 8 weeks, even more sometimes, between events. So how do we create that consistency and ongoing narrative from one to the next? Because it's difficult to keep momentum for 6 to 8 weeks. And so that's our conversation into 2024 is when, and even 25 is when do we get to the point where we want to have home courts and actual geographies make a difference? Because right now, while we represent our cities and want to be local as we can, going in and doing community events, we yet to have assigned any sort of actual MLP events to some of those home cities. Okay. Happenstance would, of course, have it that we play in Atlanta. There is a team in Atlanta. We have some tournaments out in California. There's plenty of teams in California, but there's yet to be kind of that home and away format. But that conversation is live and happening, and facility owners, operators, we're talking to as many of them as we can to understand what the landscape looks like. And ultimately, I would say if I was a betting man, I would say there's going to be indoor home pickleball arenas here in the next few years. And I cannot wait for that day. I can only imagine what it would be like. I know. Indoor, like NBA, NHL style, probably a smaller scale, call it 4,000 or 5,000 people. That's going to be a special day.
Well, and you have experience in that, so you kind of know what it would take to get to build a stadium.
Absolutely. Yeah, those days of building a 5,000 person venue in soccer in Leesburg, Virginia, with Loudoun United and DC United really does help us understand the process and what needs to happen from A to Z to be able to procure the land, make the right relationships with the right people in order to make that successful. And pickleball facilities in general are just so unique. Everybody is sprinting right now, kind of of land grab style to try to build indoor facilities as quickly as possible, whether that's going into, White Box, Bed Bath & Beyond, and then turning it into 15 courts. You're hearing about the pickle malls, other facilities that are people going into and leasing for 10 years and flipping it quickly into 6 to 8 courts and so on and so forth. But yet has there been something where it's, let's build 10 courts that support on a normal 24/7, 365 basis, and then retrofit or have a model where there is a legitimate center court that can host 2,000-3,000 people at a time. But
oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait for that. But you're right. I mean, as soon as they build courts, indoor or outdoor, anywhere, there's a need for more. It's like it's an insatiable crowd of more pickleballers, and certainly, and maybe there'll be some cities. I won't name names that have lost a few teams in the past few years that could rebuild in some way. So is there money in MLP? Like, is there, at any level, right? Like, can the players make a living playing for MLP? If you're an investor, maybe we can start with the players, but I'd love to learn about sort of the investment of the MLP as well.
And that's something that we pride ourselves on, is that we do have large prize pools. For the year, it's a $5 million pot spread across those 6 events. So right now where it is, and I know this is going to grow and continue, but as it is today, I would say estimated probably 40 or so pro pickleball players are full-time pros. You have their annual incomes ranging from maybe close to $100,000 up to a couple $100,000, depending on who they are and how high of a level they're playing at, which is exciting to see. They not only have their appearance fees and prize monies, but they also have their sponsorships with their pickleball paddle providers or anybody that's in the space. So you see the revenue streams going in the right spaces, and the criteria that you've seen be successful for other sports to have longevity and grow as the way that they should. You're seeing a lot of those ingredients in this space as well. So, for example, the big super final that was on ESPN, drawing hundreds of thousands of viewers, each of those 4 players that won the super final, each of them walked away with a $60,000 payday after winning that super final. So not too bad for a weekend's work. And it's only going to grow and get better from here as the business continues to elevate.
That's amazing. I think that's absolutely fantastic for them. I actually talked to Lindsay Newman, Riley Newman's sister, who is also a professional player. And she said she just feels so blessed to be able to do this, for a living. So it's amazing. So what about investment, right? So you said we're capped at, you said 24 teams, right?
Yep.
Is it going to be harder and harder to become an investor? Are these teams still looking for investors? And, what about those early investors that got in, or, are they going to be selling their shares? Is it going to work like, what happens with basketball, for example?
I could see any and all of the above happening for sure, because there were some very early investors that had bought in at a small fee relative to where we are today, $100,000, for example. And most, going into this year, franchises were going for a couple $1 million. And then as you go into 2023, just months and months later, you have most recently Dude Perfect buying in to a team in Major League Pickleball. I think that valuation was somewhere around $6 million. And then most recently, Mark Lazary, owner of the Milwaukee team and former Milwaukee Bucks owner, stating a $10 million valuation. So those multiples are absolutely ridiculous in a very short period of time. So I think there's certainly an appetite for buyers and sellers. And that certainly creates, good news for all the investors that are trying to get in and get out at the same time.
So, who's setting the valuation? Is it, because I have more experience in the startup world where it's a little bit of the Wild West. And you never know, and the sort of unicorn status. But in the sports world, this isn't new business, right? There's other teams with valuations, and how do they set the criteria for pickleball and just think about, like, what is this team worth?
Absolutely. A lot of it is based on the vision for going into next year and the rapid growth. It's like looking at the addressable audience of 40 plus million people are playing this sport. Usually the high participation sport converts very well to large large audience from a a perception or a spectator sport, which I'm trying to say, and that's why we're very bullish on the media deals with whether it's Tennis Channel or ESPN or CBS or all the others that could potentially be partners, and that helps us support our valuations as well as the calendar. We look at this year and people buying in at that 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 range, and you're talking about 6 to 8 events, and then the ancillary exhibitions or community events going on, and you start thinking about a 20 event calendar year in 2024. You then start talking about the facilities, like you mentioned. All of it really comes together where you have the key verticals that all other sports teams have and can make sense of these valuations. Of course, it's gone way faster, higher than we ever expected. But as this continues to elevate and these criteria that I mentioned starts to continue to take form, you can make sense of it in a big way. I mean, you just look at comps like MLS, for example, is only 27 years in its existence. A few years ago, you're buying in at less than $200 million. Now valuations are 700, 800, and even as high as 1 billion. So it's fascinating to see where the sports world is going. Maybe some of those are disconnected from reality, as a lot of sports teams do burn a lot of cash and lose money on a regular basis. But as that buyer-seller interest continues to breed, you certainly can find the right people.
I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but so are you guys paying salaries do they get some kind of stipend or salary to the players? And because I was thinking about it with respect to the valuation, some of the reason that some of these teams have had to raise so much money, or maybe you think they overspend, is that they're paying a lot to certain players. And, I was just curious if there's just the prize money, or if they're also getting some kind of stipend for being part of the team.
As it is now, all the salaries come through, all the money that goes to the players mostly comes through the MLP. So it's centralized at the league level, and those appearance fees are based on kind of ranking. And so, top player in the world is going to get more money for his or her appearance fee than the last ranked player, and everywhere in between. And then you have the teams responsible for the travel expenses and any of the things that come involved with the player outlaying any sort of cash with their attendance to the Major League Pickleball events. We love taking care of our players and making sure that they feel like they're just top notch, and so we always are taking care of them from an expenses perspective, and even help them out with appearance fees and things like that when they show up in the local community. It's critical to us to grow the right brand and top class type of organization, so we definitely want to treat our players right, and make sure that we're setting the bar, hopefully for the rest of the owners to do the same thing. So I joke with our players all the time, that I can't believe this job exists, that I'm running a pro pickleball team. I can't believe that exists where they're getting paid to be pro pickleball players. It's almost like a pinch me moment that 3-4 years ago, this wasn't even a thing. People were winning like $100 at a tournament and we're happy, not $60K.
I think we talked about this article last time we spoke, that, can pickleball save America? And I keep thinking, yes, it can. Either that or Taylor Swift or Barbie. One of those three things is going to save America. I'm not sure. So you mentioned community involvement. What kinds of things are these teams doing? And obviously you have more experience with the DC Pickleball team, but what are you seeing in terms of community involvement, and which I think is wonderful, by the way?
It is one of my favorite things as well. There's just nothing better than using your platform for positivity and bringing more smiles to people's faces than would otherwise be there. So we take a lot of pride in building out our community programming, whether that's as recently as going to the University of Maryland and donating a bunch of co-branded awesome pickleball paddles through our partner Yola, who is in Rockville, Maryland, and makes some of the best pickleball paddles and equipment in the country. And we really take pride in helping players elevate their games. So being able to do that and then play alongside of our pros was super impactful. And that's another topic, maybe we'll get into, is the college game and what that means for us into the future and whatnot. But the community aspect of this is key, and it's so unique and special because unlike any other sport, pickleball can be played by 5-year-olds up to 100-year-olds and everywhere in between. And we've seen that firsthand. We played with 5-year-old kids, and we played with a 90-year-old lady who said to me, Adam, I love this sport, and without this, I don't know if I would even be here today. It's allowed me to be active, social. I have friends that I never have had before, and I am feeling better than ever. And if she would have said, Adam, guess my age, which and most people are not going to say, I would have said she was in her their 70s and looking fantastic. It's like so inspiring to go into the community and see these things and how impactful pickleball has been for so many, because while that's just one story, I've kind of heard that at scale in other variations. So we take a lot of pride in doing that. And fortunately, Major League Pickleball sees that as well. And so they've created this foundational arm called Pickleball Cares. And that's going to be kind of our vehicle to do these events and build money around bringing pickleball to more underserved communities, whether that's at the local school level or just in general at the rec courts, YMCAs, et cetera. And so kind of all in this together mentality where we want to bring in the pros, make an impact, use our pickleball manufacturers such as Yola and others to really make a difference.
I think that's incredible. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you said, sort of ditto on all levels with respect to the community. And I do think, and I do want to talk about collegiate pickleball, since that's a subject I've been covering. Well, this seems like a great equalizer, right? Because the equipment's not that expensive. The courts don't have to be that expensive. Hopefully we will invest more. It was a lot of sports. I was a swimmer growing up, having accessible pools, being, swim safety, lifeguards, all those things, there's a harder barrier to entry than pickleball. Pickleball is just so accessible. And so I think it's really important that you mentioned that really anyone can play, but also that's a goal, is to make sure anyone can play that wants to, and encouraging it. With respect to collegiate pickleball, because I have some questions about sort of how old these players are that you're recruiting, because when it comes to sponsorship and how college, when you involve college, you have issues with sponsorship. So how is the MLP looking at sort of collegiate pickleball, or maybe the future of college pickleball?
Absolutely. We're looking to support it as much as we can, because, we look at this as how do we build the strongest pathway to pro possible. Right now, of course, we kind of have the top layer in the pyramid. So that's the professional level, but how do we build out the supporting layers of that for the longevity and the sake of the success for the sport in general? And college pickleball is a key piece of that. Right now, there are over 100 schools actually in our country that have some sort of pickleball club or group that plays on campus. And so being able to understand who those people are, what their clubs are doing, is critical. And so we've already started building relationships and tournaments around this group of 100, and have events already mapped out across this calendar year and already looking into 2024 to build more. So essentially we go in from a duper perspective, Major League Pickleball, and help them kind of give them like a stipend to help them get to the tournament, be able to afford going, offset some of those costs. And then just like any other tournament that you would be in, you have, University of Maryland versus University of North Carolina playing against each other. And there's like the regional tournaments, the national tournaments, you have your doubles partners, you have your team as well as the individuals. And so we try to highlight all of those angles with the college space. And again, it is still like at its blank canvas surface level, and growing rapidly. So I'm really fortunate to actually get to sit on College Pickleball Task Force and be at the front and center view of what this looks like, learning it as we go here over the last week. And there is just so much potential. Do you go to college tailgates and center it around kind of like a college game day to draw in people at an Ohio State Michigan game? And how do you really draw more people in? And how do you find your advocates and true ambassadors on those campuses to grow the word and bring those students into the fold for pickleball? But I do believe we're going to see scholarships sooner than later. And just like you and I being college athletes, I think we're going to see the exact same for pickleball.
Does the format work the same? Like, how many games are they playing in the tournaments in college versus maybe MLP? You mentioned, and we could just talk about, you have 2 women and 2 men. How many games are they playing at any given time during their
Yeah. So that's what I love about the format of MLP, is that you have one match is made up of 4 games. And so those 4 games are men's doubles, women's doubles, and then 2 mixed doubles. And you play to 21 via rally scoring, which is a whole nother element that we've added in that's created quicker games, more entertaining games, and easier to understand from an education perspective, just straight to 21. There's no 1-0-2, 2-1-2, or whatever it is in confusion. And so we've kept it super simple with the rally scoring, and those four games to 21 create your final score. So if a team were to win men's, women's, and mixed and lose the last mix, they win the match 3-1 in any of those other permutations. This is another unique element. If you are tied 2-2 at the end of those 4 matches, you then get to go into a dream breaker, which is one-on-one play to 21, and you rotate out your players every 4 points. And it's extremely exciting and nerve-wracking and really entertaining across the board.
That's like a relay in swimming or in running. It's like, you really got to rely on your team, which is, the focus, right? Like there's a lot of sports that are individual sports, but when you want to play your best and you want to do your best, but you also have to rely on your team. So back to college, are they also playing in that same format, or is it more typical tournament style you're seeing?
Yeah, we're trying to institute that as much as we can as kind of like the universal way of playing, even though normal conventional pickleball model is your score to 11 and you're siding out and, scoring on your serve. We really are doing our best to institute that as the way in the universal language. Of course, no one likes change. So, trying to convince people at the local rec courts that is the way and that is the movement. We do it one handshake, one brick at a time to try to convince that way. But starting at the college level is going to be impactful because, as those generations go through the pickleball ecosystem, it's just going to become more and more common.
Is there an age that you have to be in order to be a player on the MLP? Because I know there's some pretty young players.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to skew younger. It's fascinating to see the young talent that is in Major League Pickleball. As long as there's parental consent, they can play. And so, top female in the world, Annalie Waters, 16 years old, and she has just been dominating the pickleball world for many years. And she's only 16 years old. There's a handful of others that are in that 15 to 18 range that are playing at the top level, are in the premier division of Major League Pickleball, and are just doing really well. And you are also looking at kind of, from a GM perspective, we're already looking at young local talent in our area in hopes that one day there is an academy or a farm system. So I can't wait to see who the next stars are going to be at age 12, 13, 14, 15, and so on and so forth.
And then so you can play at that point, once you have parental consent, then any age goes. It's just who's the best player. And so I wonder in college pickleball, and I think this is something that I'm sure is yet to be defined, but when there's sponsorship conflict, because if they go to college and who oversees it in college, is it the NCAA or do they have their own? Are you guys getting involved, or not you necessarily, but are you seeing the MLP or DUPR getting involved with trying to make sure that you sort of protect the best interest of the players when they go to college?
Yeah, definitely. And there's also kind of the NIL conversations that we have to have too, and understand what's the most beneficial for those players. So absolutely trying to figure out what the best format would be. The tournaments themselves, we have sponsors for those so that really nobody's coming out of pocket to play at the college level. But yeah, there's certainly going to be situations where a student athlete may have to choose whether they want to go to college and play through that pathway or immediately go pro, just like you would see sometimes in basketball. They forego their college eligibility and go straight out of high school or something like that. And again, that's where we are today, but that could very well evolve over the course of the next few years, and those rules and regulations may certainly change.
So what are the businesses that you're seeing getting involved, maybe from a sponsorship level, outside of maybe just the traditional pickleball? It's like, again, the wild west. There's a million different types of paddle companies, but what are the companies the businesses that are really supporting pickleball that you've seen?
Yeah. One of our primary sponsors is Major League Pickleball, which is one of my favorites, is Margaritaville. So Margaritaville, of course, has resorts all around the world, and they have pickleball courts at many of them. And so for them, it's like the natural audience because it's essentially an adult version of going to Disney for kids. You have just entertainment for adults, and pickleball is included in that. So the fact that we go around the country and play at many locations is great for their audience. and it is kind of a natural fit. You have your standard categories as well. Like on the hospital side, HSS is one of our partners. They do a lot of sports sponsorships and are kind of lead doctors with the Yankees and the Knicks and others. So excited to see kind of at that level already, there are well-known brands that not only spend in the top 4 sports, but also are dipping their toes
That's amazing.
Major League Pickleball too.
That's great. I mean, that's fantastic. So is there, in your role, it sounds like you get to do a lot of different things. And what would you say, like, what's coming? What's your next year going to be like? What's your main focus personally and even from the team?
Yeah, absolutely. I do get to wear a lot of hats, which is always thrilling to me. Fortunately, I've had the opportunities to do it before with the soccer teams. But, I'm looking forward to most is kind of a few pronged. First, uncovering like what is the future of facilities? When do we get to that conversation of actually building an indoor pickleball facility? And then what does that mean kind of trickle down for the rest of our community building and all of the tentacles that potentially latch on to that? And that is the academy level, the college level, and all the other potential younger players that could be a part of that facility. You look at it, and that facility should be a place where it's home for a lot of people. It's home for any of the local pickleball players, no matter the age, but then it's also a place to engage and be all under one roof with the pro players and the up and coming players. Like, how cool is that you have a built-in fan base, you have a built-in place to basically all be under the same roof, under the same home as the pros, and be a part of those stories to say like, oh yeah, I played with that 12-year-old kid and now he just signed a pro contract at DC Pickleball Team. He used to be over here on this court 6 and now he's center court and I'm cheering him on. Like, it just like kind of all comes together with that facility piece. And for me, that's why I'm so excited about it, because that represents a lot of other things. And that means we've made it to a very important threshold of the growth of pickleball.
Do you think it'll be an Olympic sport?
Yes. I do. I don't know if it'll be as soon as 2028 or so, but I've already, in talking to a lot of the pro athletes, one of our players in the first part of this year was Stefano Vern, and he's from France. He said to me, I would love nothing more than to be on the Olympic team representing my country. Another great athlete, Yuda Castillo from Spain, same thing. So the athletes are already talking about it, and I really hope we can do whatever we can to help support that and make it happen.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, do you see that this expanding beyond the U.S. In terms of what the MLP wants? Major League Pickleball doesn't say U.S. Major League Pickleball; it just says Major League Pickleball. Like, do you think that it'll go beyond our borders?
I do. And while it is, absolutely skyrocketing here in the United States, we've already talked to a variety of people in Canada, in Europe, and other locations. I was just talking to somebody earlier today in the UK talking about playing pickleball. And he was saying it's just kind of getting here. We're excited about it. I played it myself for the first time a month ago, and they're kind of catching the bug and catching up to speed. And so we do have some folks within the Major League Pickleball staff level helping kind of shepherd what international pickleball might look like, and where the key places are to start. And again, at the ground level, literally at the blueprint level, building it as we go, to figure out what exactly that strategy is. But there are people in those specific countries thinking the same way and wanting to partner. So it is a two-way street.
It's exciting. Well, I really appreciate your time and all this explanation. It's just fantastic to see its growth, and it just obviously I keep thinking of more ideas and more growth potential for the business. But I really appreciate your time, Adam, and I am so excited about this next year. And I think hopefully we can both keep playing, because we're both, keep dinking, but also just really stay in touch about what's happening next. And good luck this season, and excited. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Excited for it as well.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Simply Pickleball. We will be back very soon with great interviews, discussions, and more, all about pickleball. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or any of your favorite podcasting outlets. Until next time, happy dinking.